Welcome to the Peopling Podcast, where we hang out with brilliant human beings who teach us how to be better, well, humans, and decode what makes us tick and click. Inspired by the book Peopling, available on Amazon. Let's get this episode started.
Hi, friends. Oops, hang on. I got to move this out. It says live stream option. We're not doing a live stream option. Okay. All right. Ready? Hi, friends. Welcome to another Peopling podcast episode. I'm so glad you're here with me. This is based on the heart of my book called Peopling, where we learn to connect in every season of life. It's all about communication, connection, and tapping into the wisdom and beautiful brains of amazing people in our world. And I get to introduce you to our VIP guest today. Her name is Kristine Goebel. And I'm so excited that you said yes, Kristine. Introduce you to our audience so that they get to know a little bit about you. And then I'm going to ask that you just open up with your heart, share a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. And then we're going to dive into the deeper part of the conversation. So Kristine comes to us with a background in behavioral science and business, and she cut her teeth. Hang on a second. I'm going to do that all over again. Kristine comes to us with a background in behavioral sciences and business, and Kristine cut her teeth learning systems and people-first thinking at Toyota before directing operations for a CPA and wealth advisory firm. In 2014, she started her own HR and consulting firm, and in 2020, founded Accompany Suite. It's an organizational health and development company, and she and her team help leaders restore trust and strengthen relationships and bring God's design for work and relationships to life through coaching and facilitation and consulting. And it is my honor to be able to introduce you to our beautiful guest and my friend, Kristine Goebel. I'm so glad you said yes. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, who you are, what led you to where you're at in your beautiful life now.
Yeah, so I'm originally from New York. And so I'm in Florida now, but originally from New York. And so when I was kind of going through school, I was a music major and I loved everything music. And so I conducted and all woodwinds, things like that. And went to college right out of high school and for music education. And shortly after that, like it all was crazy at home. And so I ended up leaving college and then going to live back home with my mom. So it was just a tough time. My dad had died before that and all this kind of stuff was going on. So, I was the only girl, got to go home, take care of mom. And then I just went to work and I got this job at a Toyota dealership and I was really bummed out. Like, not gonna lie, that was it was tough, and I was going through you're 19, 20 years old and like life's heavy and like, you don't know what you're gonna do or who you're gonna be. And so I was kind of a mess. I won't go into all the detail of that. If anybody wants to know, they can call me, I'll tell them. But yeah, so just like a mess. But it was such a great environment to be in. And I had this boss and he was tremendous. And so even through all my messiness, he kept giving me these opportunities for growth. And so I went from one department into his department. And then at his department, he was higher up in like leadership there. And so there was this program that Toyota Motors was putting on for the dealerships. And it was called the Signature Program. And, at 20 years old, he says, all right, so we want to send you to go work with Toyota Motors and learn all these things. And so at the time I was like, all right, like, I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life right now. So I'll go and I'll learn. And so it was so cool because I was able to really understand at a really young age how people and systems have to work hand in hand, that they can't be separate. So how do you have respect for humanity while you're trying to hold people accountable at the same time? Plus get something done, right? So you're trying to accomplish this vision. You've got to create a process to do it. You've got to get all the people on the same page and like steer it so that it doesn't go rogue or deal with the conflicts that come up because people, right? We all have a different way of approaching things and all of that. And so like, how do you even handle all those things? And so on a very basic level, right, very foundational level, they taught me. And I got to work with people who were working directly with some of the people in Japan. So culturally, things are different there. And so they live very communally. And so it's just an interesting take on how communities work and things like that. So imagine, this is a lot of years ago. I won't say how many, right? So we're like a few decades ago, but my brain was so spongy still that I started understanding it in the same way that I understood how to conduct an orchestra or a band, right? And so all of a sudden, I would be able to hear which instrument was off a little bit. And maybe it was sharp or it was flat, right? So imagine taking that same way of approaching people and you could pick up on the little cues, right? Like you could pick up on stuttering or you could pick up on a body language cue, or you could pick up on a sigh or, or just language that was used over and over again. So you could understand how to adapt your own language to match their language to make them more comfortable. And so they would talk to you. So all of these things, this musical element started to happen very naturally again, because I was younger. And then that just led that knowledge. I was with them for about 8 years. And then I moved to Florida, ended up that I came to a dealership here in Florida, but I wasn't there long because I was like, I want to try something new. So I told my boss there and he said, well, that's great because my son just opened a CPA firm. I'd really love it if you go and help him because, he can do the whole tax and accounting thing. He really doesn't. The people part wasn't his jam, right? So I was like, cool, I'll go do that. So I took my binder, right? Because this is a lot of years ago. So we dealt with binders and handwritten notes and stuff back then. So I took my binder, went and basically set up the entire system, all the processes, all the systems, all of the customer service approach, how we're going to talk to people, our like position from a marketing standpoint, how we're going to do all that. We were small. I mean, it was, we were a spit in a bucket back then, but because of the foundation of it and how it was built, it was easily scalable. And so fast forward, I was doing that for 14 years. And during that time became partner, went back to school, got the degree in behavioral science and business. And so I could understand now a couple decades later how business is operating and how they're educating people on business and how it operates, and actually compare what's actually happening with a mind that's now a few decades in compared to what the schools are teaching. And so now Accompany Suite, which you mentioned, we've been around now for 6 years. And so, so we take that whole relational aspect, and because you can't have accountability if you don't have a relationship, right? So you can force people to do things, you can, do all of that. So what we've done is develop there's workshops, which these are like, we're creating connection. There's programs where it's like, no, we need change management and we need it over a long period of time. And that's only going to happen. It's kind of like an object in motion stays in motion, right? So you have to do it over a long period of time, because if you take your foot off the gas with that, it reverts back. So you got the rubber band effect. And so we've got that going on. And then more recently, because we always say a healthy workplace will lead to healthier families and healthier communities. And we know that that's true. So what we've recently done is we've now taken these elements that we've done in the workplaces, because we're dealing with change management, root cause analysis, and like how to get a group of people to move in a direction all together at the same time, so they're locked in step and not kind of pulling each other in these, rabbit holes. So we've worked through all of that in a workplace setting. Like I said, more recently, we now have programs for families and for community groups, so that whether it's neighbors that want to get together, it could be worship teams at a church, or 55 plus communities, or just, like I said, a family unit. So we've now taken a lot of that concept, because it's more complicated in how you teach it in a workplace, because, there's just different moving parts there. And we've taken that and we've now got elements that are actually happening in the home or the community. So it's transferable now to the workplace. So they all ebb and flow, because your life, right? It's super big. And it's got all these moving parts. So if you're just kind of siloing everything, it won't work. So now we're trying to cover a whole life instead of just dealing with one particular area. But I mean, the bulk of the work we do here is for workplaces. And yeah, no, it's been so fun.
And that's how I've known you. Before we unpack that, I love some of the things that you shared with us. I remember going home, college age, head held low, not really what I wanted to do. I too was working at a dealership, but I was selling cars. I hated it. I
Yeah.
worked 13 out of 14 days. We had every other Sunday off. It was long, hard days. And I just remember looking around going like, this can't be my life. Like, this is not what I want for myself. So I can totally relate to where you were sitting in that moment. And then somebody saw something in you and was like, here's an opportunity. And you took it. You bet on yourself and said, what do I have to lose? Or I have a lot to gain, or let's see what's possible. And I love that about you. I love that boldness that you took a chance on yourself. And you said something is so significant. I've been in jobs or in workplaces where I've hated everything about it. Would wake up, but the alarm clock would go off and I would start crying because I was like, I have to go and do this for the next 9 hours and push through this day. And I remember just counting down the hours until I could have a weekend. And like, that's not what was intended for our lives. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people that can relate to what you said. When you don't love your work or your workplace or the people that you communicate with all the time because there's this breakdown of communication, there's almost no way to compartmentalize or separate that from the rest of your life. You may not walk into the door when you go home and talk about it, but like it's there, right? And so I love that you're expanding into this other part. So, how I've known you for a handful of years is serving businesses of all sizes. And I know you'll come in and you'll do workshops and you'll do trainings. And I would love it if you would share a story with me, with us, and maybe something that was this wild or unexpected, or maybe your favorite outcome of where somebody, whether it was an individual or a team or a company as a whole, that got to experience this incredible communication breakthrough because of something that you shared with them. And they had just this most incredible aha moment that you were able to bring. And is there a particular story that comes to mind?
Yeah, so we've got a few. I think that there's some that stand out and they're kind of similar. And so these are that typically happens when we're kind of going deep. But I'll share one story with you. This story was like pivotal to this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. We were in a very large organization, multiple locations, and we had done a workshop. This particular one was just basically communication basics. And one of the frontline workers, this was their first time they ever worked a job where an opportunity to do a little bit of self-discovery, grow in emotional intelligence, right? So this was brand new territory for this person. And they at the end, they didn't leave with everybody else. And so I went over and I sat next to her and I said, and she hadn't talked the whole time. So you don't know, like if you're in a larger group, you don't really know what's going on. But obviously if they're sticking around, there's a reason. So I went and sat with her and I was like, tell me about, did you enjoy it? Just trying to make small talk. And two things happened. When she went to talk, what I had learned was she had just overcome a very, very difficult time in her life. And it was very visible once she started to talk. I could tell there was a lot of damage to her face and things like that. And she looked at me and she started welling up with tears. And she goes, if I had only known this information 10 years ago, my whole life would be different today. And I was like, whoa. And then I asked her, okay, well, what happens from today on? And we were able to have this entire conversation. And that was like immediate. Because it doesn't always happen that way, but it does happen for some where they hear something. And in just a couple hours, the information you're sharing has the ability to change the rest of their life. Because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. You don't. And then when you can open the doorway, like there's a difference between what somebody intends and what your perception of their intention is. There's a big difference. And so that's on a small scale, like one and done kind of thing. And we were able to stay in touch with her. That was a pivotal, like, my goodness, I didn't realize the impact this could have.
Before we dive any deeper into this conversation, I want to take a quick moment to share a tool that has significantly improved my life, and that's called Growth Day. It's like having world-class mentors right in your pocket. There are daily challenges that help grow your confidence, your inspiration, and your drive. Check out the show notes for your link to a free trial, and don't let another moment pass you by without checking out Growth Day.
The other story I'm going to tell you, I was working with this company. They're global, so they have multiple locations, lots of different cultures going on at the same time, very complex. And the CEO is a little bit more, let's just say he's a very dominant, aggressive, like risky. She's like, go, 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 go. Likes it, get it
Tracks.
done, right? Yeah, like we see them all the time, which I love, right? Because I'm like, ooh, a challenge, right? Like, let's go. Because sometimes, like you talk about the most misunderstood people, and those people that are direct and decisive and moving at lightning speed, they're very misunderstood because sometimes they move so fast they kind of miss everybody along the way. So you gotta kind of reel them back, like,
Like a bullet
"Hey,
train.
right, like, this is how everybody's perceiving you, and I know it's not true, and so let's make sure we unveil what's true about you, not what they're perceiving about you." But, I mean, they tend to listen a little better because we're objective. They hired us in, they're making an investment in us, so we have their attention a little bit more than sometimes people on their staff do. And so that story, is basically after a couple of months, I said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you show up to the strategy session and don't talk?" He was like, "What do you mean don't talk?" I'm like, "I just need you to nod. I need you to agree. I just need you to hear what they're saying." So he did. And when I tell you he had a heart monitor on his watch and I kept watching it go off, and I was like, oh, this poor man, right? But he did it. And when I tell you in an instant, the entire culture of his organization changed because that was a direct result. What happened as a result of that is that the trust was starting to rebuild because they felt heard. And now it wasn't about the fact, did he go with every single suggestion? Did he end up pushing back on some things? Absolutely. But it was a half a day and they felt heard. They felt seen. They felt valued. They were able to, because a lot of people, I'm wordy. So if I don't have the space to get all my thoughts and my stuff out, I don't feel like somebody's hearing me. I feel dismissed in some ways. And because I understand that that's what's happening with people that are typically on the staff level, I had to give them a chance to be able to speak up. And because of that, they've changed their entire model on how they run their systems and their operations now. And they do the regular check-ins and they have the regular leadership team meetings and they're regularly doing strategy and it didn't happen overnight. Like you have to get it going and then they have to see the result of it. And then once they can see these rhythms, right? It's all rhythmic. It's all rhythmic. So once they see this thing happening and the results that are happening because of it, they're more likely to shift on how things happen in their workplace as opposed to, I used to get, well, I do still get it. That's a bunch of kumbaya. I don't want to do kumbaya. I don't want to just play, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, you have to. We have to have the kumbaya and the accountability and the critical thinking and the decision making. They all go hand in hand.
Extraordinary. I love that story. It was a profound example of just a shift in how we regularly show up or our default behaviors could instantly change the perspective of those around us and those around us that matter. Oh, that is so extraordinary. Let me ask you this based on your experience, because you've got a ton of experience working with serving people in understanding behavioral styles and communication and breakdowns and aha moments. If you had to say what one of the top issues in the workplace might be when it comes to communication, how would you define that or relate that in a way that we can understand what one of those top.
Yeah. So I always say offense, right? So people are personally offended. And so anytime we start seeing somebody trying to defend themselves or finding that they've been offended by another person, that's like a symptom. But that could be unleashing a bunch of things, right? It could just be that maybe they've got some self-awareness. Maybe they're they're tying too much of their identity in with the role that they play at work, if that's happening. So we're able to really lock in and uncover some of this stuff when I see that, I know, okay, there's more going on here. So then it just becomes discernment. And then I've got to get some understanding around what is causing the offense, right? It could just be that somebody's offensive, and then you got to deal with that, right? But it's usually a combination of I tend to offend people because of my tone, my body language, my aggression, my speed. And then the other person is I tend to be offended pretty regularly by most people. And so if you got to get underneath and get to the root cause of why those things are happening, but they're usually insecurities, things like that on both ends. And they're surfacing as, oh, they offend everybody or, whatever.
It's really easy to put those labels. I remember somebody who was just a jerk of a person, and his friends would always say, that's just fill in the name. And it's like, because you let him get away with it. I've heard some people say, "Oh, I'm just direct." And you can be direct without being offensive and opinionated, right? So sometimes we put labels on things to make it okay in our own mind or to justify it or just tolerate. Tolerance is something that is coming up in my life a lot. Like I'm looking at things in my life and I'm like, why have I been tolerating this for so long? And just by asking the question starts removing the tolerances. Like, I don't want that in my life anymore, or I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. So it's interesting what happens when we get introduced to some of these ideas, much like what you're sharing, and can have an aha moment. What is the biggest breakthrough that you feel could happen either in a personal relationship or professional, whichever way you'd like to answer, when it comes to communication? Where do you think initial breakdowns happen? Is it not really understanding where the other person's coming from? Is it just a lack of knowledge, lack of care?
Yeah, it always starts though. It's like, well, if you look at yourself, am I coming at this from a place of observation or am I coming at this from a place of judgment? And so you've got to check yourself, right? So it's always that self-awareness, but the way to break through it is always be seeking the understanding. So you should always be listening and then asking a question so you can better understand what's happening, because you're never going to get to a place of respect or understanding and value in the relationship. Like it never gets to a place of trust if you're stuck judging or making assumption, because assumptions, we do it all day long. Like I still struggle with it. My husband and I were on a call the other day and I'm like, well, he's thinking this. And he was like, that's not what I'm thinking. And it just came out of my mouth because the relationships that are closest to us, like I'm way more patient with my clients than I am with my husband or my children. And it's not because we don't have a healthy family. It's just because I'm so close to them that I put in these narratives for them. And so we all do it. And so thankfully, obviously everybody here knows exactly what we teach and why and all that stuff. So, and my husband is in the business with us. So we catch each other often when it's happening and we hold each other accountable and all that kind of stuff. But we can remove offense because like we're people. Of course, that's what's going to happen. And of course, we're all going to be challenged with it. And anybody who tells you they've figured it out and they're over it and they're better than or have grown past it, they're not telling you the truth. Because we're human, we are always thinking and always formulating this next move because it's primal, right? Like how we move and operate is primal. So we're always in a state of protection. And so when you're trying to protect yourself, you create assumption. And assumption itself isn't bad from there's a lion running at me and I should run because it probably wants to eat me. Like that's a pretty good assumption. Like I wouldn't want a lion running at me. You know what I mean? So I probably want to get out of the way. So that's like a healthy assumption, but like, well, Kristi was mean to me today, so it must be because of me and blah, blah, blah. And she didn't say hi and she normally gives me a hug, but I didn't get a hug today. So, forget about Kristi. Well, when that stuff starts, and like we've all done it, but when that starts to happen, what then tends to happen is if I don't tell you, Kristi, that I'm upset with you or, hey, Kristi, when we saw each other the other day, I didn't get a hug. I just want to make sure you're good. Like, if I don't ever go down that road, guess what I tend to do? Hey, Becca, let me tell you about what Kristi did today. She didn't, because it doesn't stay bottled up inside. It comes out somehow. Or if you don't tell other people, guess what's happening? You're telling yourself over and over again about what she did and why she did it. And you make up all these narratives that aren't true. So we got to guard against that. So offense, I would say, is probably the number one thing that shows up as a symptom, but there's so many underlying reasons for it. But if you see people offended or offending, it's just an easy signal to like dig deeper. There's more going on here.
There is more going on. And, just to add to what you'd shared there, when we create that story, our mind then seeks out ways to prove that my belief is accurate. And then I'm always looking at it through that lens. So now I'm looking for more evidence that Kristine doesn't like me, right? to widen that gap. And the next thing you know, it's like, man, we were close friends. I don't even know what happened. And legitimately that other person doesn't know what happened because there was this whole story being contrived over here that actually wasn't even real. So I love that you said that. If we don't address it, it just becomes this deep, wide gap that will suck up a relationship and
Yeah.
swallow it whole, just make it disappear. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. 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 It's happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
It would take a really strong and big person to make that phone call and say, you know what, Kristine, you used to be one of the most important people in my life, and I still love you, but I'm not quite sure what happened. Like, what would happen if every one of us, because I know every one of us has a relationship that's kind of fallen off to the side and we're not quite sure why.
Yeah.
If we came into this conversation of like curiosity and the desire to mend, and who knows what could turn out from that, I've
Wouldn't that
also
be
heard
lovely?
it would be amazing. We would restore relationships all over this world, and that sadness of mourning a relationship that doesn't exist anymore can be mended, and we could be full in our hearts again. It would be incredible. So you share so many things though that like if we get it wrong, we're literally starving our relationships until they just don't exist anymore. And if we get it right, we could have this really intimate and safe conversation where we do feel like you understand me, you get me, and I want you to stay in my life because I feel really comfortable and loved when I'm around you in this conversation. And so is that one of the reasons why you see like the need for it to move into your business, to move into the personal home outside of the business as well?
Yeah, because no matter how much we try to separate them, they're not separate. Your life is your life. And so you are who you are. And absolutely, I agree with, certain things should be private, right? There are things that you share with your family. It really doesn't have a good place in the workplace. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying the family units are broken. I'm saying that. I'm saying that the best community groups, and I'm just talking nonprofits, right? If I just deal with the nonprofit sector, if I just deal with 55 plus, if I just deal with, I don't know, a club, right? Toastmasters, whatever it is, there's always this element of brokenness inside of it because there isn't this understanding that's taking place. And so what ends up happening is if we don't teach it again, because it used to exist as a very natural form, but AI, what's happening is we're losing our ability to really think because our brains are just rewiring and they're rewiring and we're now rewired for instant gratification. And so people don't move fast enough for 'em. They're just slow and I'm going to run you over. If I don't have an answer, then I feel like I'm letting everybody down because I couldn't find the answer, right? So we've compounded the issues, not just in the workplace, but it varies. And like you were saying, you have a bad day at work. I was a working mom with 3 kids and a husband and all of that. I came home from work and I didn't have it in me. I was like, how quickly can I feed everybody and get them to bed so that I can go to sleep and check out and then get up and do it again tomorrow? And I did that for decades. And it wasn't because it was depleting the people I cared most about, the people why, like my whole reason for getting up and going to work. And then it just became all consuming and it wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? And so I do think if you can teach some of these techniques at home, they can bring it to work. And if you can teach some of these things in the community, they can bring it to home or they can bring it to work. And it's all kind of like, why do we even take this approach? Because for us, our big thing is if you're laughing, you're learning. So we bring elements of fun and creative expression and things because if I've got somebody and I give them some paint or I give them an instrument to like just bang on it, you know what I mean? Like here's all these different percussion things. So if I give them something to kind of not be so deep in their emotion and so deep in their thought and we're just talking, it's kinda like if you have something to say to your kid, take them in the car ride and let them drive and then ask them some good questions because they can't think around it because they're doing 2 things. They're driving a car and they're answering your question. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, we wanna get you unguarded quickly because if we can get to the root cause of what's holding you back from where you wanna go or the decision you wanna make or the job you actually wanna have because you know what's interesting, Kristi, about work is most people can actually correlate the change they want to make in the world to the work that they're doing. They just don't know how. They don't know. They're like, "Well, I don't want to do that. I want to help people." It's like such a broad statement. And I'm like, "Okay, well, do you guys have clients? Yes. Do you have a team? Yes. Okay. What about those people?" You know what I mean? Like, how are you using what you're doing and helping those people? Oh, I didn't know. Right. And sometimes they're in the wrong industry. Right. That happens too. But I do think, yeah, like going into this entire like memory, focus, emotional awareness, right? We've got critical thinking, self reflection. They're needed everywhere. And if you're not resting and you don't understand the value of rest and why your brain can only do so much, like our human brains, yes, they're rewired. Yes, we've got different triggers nowadays that are causing like these, chemical firings in our brain. They're different things than we're up against. There's no lions running at us in the United States, right? Well, mostly, right?
Mostly.
So mostly. But what we have to do is we have to get people to understand that your brain is your brain and it can only do so much. So if you don't care for your brain well, and you don't understand how your emotions and your thoughts are impacting your behavior because you don't even know what you believe to be true because you're so inundated with technology, right? It is changing your belief system. So because it's subtle, right? It's subliminal. We don't know it's happening and next thing you know, you're angry at everybody or angry at an industry or angry at the politician or angry at the war or angry at and it's big stuff. It's big stuff and there's all these voices that you miss out on the one voice. And I just speak in terms of your own, right? But if your faith, you have a thing you should be listening to, not everyone. And so just like honing it down to like you have to know what you believe to be true and if you don't, quiet everything around you because you'll never find it. You'll never find it. So, I mean, that's it. And so we're just trying to teach people how to be still and to be quiet so that they can understand the peace that is available to them when they can be quiet enough to find it. And yeah, I get it. I'm busy too, right? But I'm not going to exchange my life and my peace and my tranquility and my, stableness. I'm not exchanging that for work and I'm not exchanging that for my neighbor relationships and I'm not exchanging that for family relationships. It's just not happening. If it's not adding value to us, then we've got to create some boundaries. I'm not cutting everybody out. Anybody could pick up the phone and call me, right? I'm not doing that, but I am creating really healthy boundaries for myself because that's what I need. So yes, it's incredibly necessary to not just have this in the workplace, but to also, bring it into the home and, because everybody in their home may not have access to it at their workplace.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I thank you for that. That was everything that you said was just incredible. And I'm thinking about a friend I just recently had a conversation with. She had purged social media for 30 days. And instead of that time investment in her apps, she spent time in the Bible and she spent time journaling and she spent time sitting on her back porch with a cup of coffee and just watching the birds. And her heart was changed, her
Yeah.
mind was clear, her soul was renewed. It was just enlightening and very smart. So I'm hearing what she was sharing with me with all of the things that you were just saying. Yeah, the shifts in our beliefs is so subtle. We don't even see it. We don't even realize it until one day it's like, no, this is what I'm so passionately believing. It's like, how did that happen? Love everything you said. You are so deep engrossed in communication skills building for people and understanding the needs of different types of behaviors and personalities from oneself and the inner workings of not only a family unit, but different companies and organizations, emotional intelligence. I love listening to some of the things that you teach on emotional intelligence. I think it's one of the most underrated things we should be focused on right now because it's so, so important on how we connect with others and especially our self awareness. With all of that as the foundation, what would you suggest for an average person? Like, I want to wake up and I want to be the best version of myself I can be today. What might be a mindset shift or a shift in perspective that could help me step into being the best version of myself? Is there something that I can think about or do or learn from you now that can help make that happen?
Yeah. So I would say the quickest thing, right, is always look at everything as this a reaction or a response and just make sure that you know the difference, right? So you're stimulated by something and then you take action. Well, you're either backing them up to each other where it's just a reaction. So I'm stimulated and I act, as opposed to a response where I'm stimulated by something and there's this pause right in the middle for mindfulness. And so you could call it a 90-second, but it really can be done in half a second. It's just that 1 second, right? Like if I stop myself and I say, now how am I going to respond to this? Do I need to ask a question? Just pay attention. Because once you can like that self-management piece of emotional intelligence, I'm aware, I'm doing this, I'm going to practice, and I'm going to manage self. In order to ever be able to manage relationships, you got to manage yourself first. And so that would be my very first step am I reacting or am I responding? And if I'm responding, again, it can happen. Nobody will really know that pause happened, but it's just like zip it for a sec before you speak because we all love to hear ourselves speak. So just quiet yourself for a second and ask yourself that question. Am I reacting or am I responding? And then that just small bit it'll change your relationships in the long run.
It is so powerful. I'll never have to think again, man, if I could go back in time, if I could rewind that conversation and respond a different way, right? There's so many times that I've reacted and beat myself up, damaged a relationship, that emotional scar is there that sometimes an apology won't fully erase.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And trust, it's like once you break it, and I think people forget too that trust is like multifaceted. So if I think about somebody I worked for in the past, like, would I trust them with my kids? Yeah, they'd be fine. Do I trust them to know my deepest secrets? Not a chance ever. Right. And the reason is because he broke it so many times. He didn't listen. He did all these things. And that made me feel like I wasn't a valued person. And he didn't make me feel that way. Like that's how I felt. Right. He didn't force anything on me. But again, trust, it's like, well, yeah, I trust him with this part, but not with this part. And so when we talk about trust and earning trust, it's about consistency, right? So we just need to make sure that we are who we are. I mean, if that's who you are, be you, man. But just know you're not going to have a lot of people that are really going to count on you when the going gets tough. They're going to leave, right? Especially in the workplace. It's like if you wonder why you have turnover, it's probably because people don't trust you with their big stuff. They might trust you with the little stuff, but they're not trusting you with the big stuff. So what happens? Now you can't trust them with your big thing because if they work for you, they came here to help fulfill your dream, your vision, and you just got to really know where you land with trust because it's like a rainbow. It's like a spectrum, It's not I trust them or I don't. It's what do I trust them with and why?
I've never thought of it from that perspective. It makes so much sense. That is absolutely incredible. What would be a recommendation for a leader or a business owner on something that you can do right now to either build, rebuild, or ask for forgiveness and hopefully another shot of that deep level trust? What would be
Yeah.
something somebody could do right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is if I was leading a company, I'd be asking questions like, what did I miss? If I wasn't in the room, what's the conversation you guys would be having? You got to uncover the things they're not saying. And then you have to be quiet and listen and don't have an opinion about it. Just listen and then ask more questions, right? You always throw in well, tell me more about that, or, and what else, right? Those are like the magic. I gotta not react right now. And so I want to understand a little bit better, but fill in the blank, because a lot of people that are struggling with people trusting them, or even if they're not, we always feel like we have to fill the silence. Don't worry about that. Just ask the leading, tell me more, and what else. Fill it that way and keep them talking, because the more we're talking, the less we're listening. Or it's like simple stuff, but figure out what it is that they want to say, but they're too afraid to say it, and then be ready for it because it might hurt. And, and if you have a heart monitor on, turn it around so nobody can see it go off.
It is so funny to me. Tell me you're not stressing like crazy without telling me, it's like,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, you might need to see a doctor right now.
Yeah, no kidding. But it's so like, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? And so if you're in that position, you better giddy up and get ready to hear the hard stuff. Because if you can't, you're never going to have a team that's locked in with you. And that's what it takes. Like, for people to work with us, Kristi, if that head person is not all in, we're not doing it. I'm not doing it because it's a waste of time. Because I'm going to end up coaching their people to leave the company. You know what I mean? Like, just don't. Because that's what happens, because and not because I'm against the company or anything, but because if you don't believe in the things that you are paying somebody to come in and teach your team, it won't work. They're going to want to go someplace else. It's just the way it is, and I'm not asking them to leave. I'm saying they're telling me they don't want to be there anymore. So what am I going to do? Or let's talk about it. That's what we do.
And you're saying something really significant. A lot of times people will bring in a consultant, a business consultant such as yourself, and you're teaching, but the bigger part is you're coaching. And to be coachable means that you are fully open to receiving feedback, accepting feedback, and considering your part in that, your ownership of that. And I feel like a lot of people just want to reject it without even like I'm not even going to accept that. But then there can never be change if you don't hear it, receive it, and then do something about it to pivot from that behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So I love that you just say like you're just not going to be a client of mine if you're not coachable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got to. Good
Got
boundaries.
you. Yeah,
My
and I
time's valuable,
absolutely. And
you
and
know?
the people inside of that company, if they're yearning for somebody to just hear them and be open to their perspective and their contribution, and it just always falls flat. Who wants to show up that way every day? I would imagine I would be looking for a new place as well.
If that's the case, really, if like, say an HR director comes and asks for, this is what we want. And then I come to find that, maybe the whole leadership isn't quite in alignment with the change that HR director, then I'll say, hey, well, we've got these personal development jam sessions. That's what we call them because they're musical, right? So we call them jam sessions. So we've got this whole other area that you can do this professional development and work on yourself. And it doesn't mean they have to leave their company. Please don't, I don't want to be misunderstood there.
Nobody
But
said
I
that. No.
am saying, decide, you have a decision to make on where you are and what you want to be. And you also have a decision to make on how you want to perceive what's around you. And so just because it's a difficult or a challenging environment, you're going to grow and you're going to learn a lot in that environment. So I would recommend you get as much out of that environment as you can. Learn, have an influence, learn how to talk to the people that are most difficult, and then decide if you want to be there or not. I did it for a lot of years because it was sharpening me and I'm grateful for it. And it wasn't all bad. But at some point in time, I was just like, I want to do something different now, and that's okay too. You're not locked in forever.
That's right. You have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, always.
Okay. All right. My final question for you, my friend. Part of the Peopling book, we talk about being the change. And so You've given us so many great things to adapt and infuse into our lives from here on out. But if I were to ask you, what's one thing that we could hear from you now and infuse into our world so we can be the change for our sphere, for the people that we care about around us? What's one way that we could show up different, better to be the change?
I think we really have to look in the mirror sometimes and make sure that we're giving our best and not just our good enough. And so when we tend to give grace very freely to one another, we're not as graceful with ourselves, but sometimes we excuse really bad behavior. And so I think those are the hardest ones to do. But if you really want to change, you got to look at yourself. You got to take a long, hard look at yourself. And if you're doing great, then start evaluating who are those people that are closest to you and how are they influencing your decisions in your life. That's always got to be inward first, always. And most people that are listening to podcasts are listening to grow and to learn. So I would assume if they got to minute 40, whatever, it's because they're learning and they want to grow and challenge themselves. So take a good look, make sure it's your best and not your good enough. And if it is just good enough, do better.
I love that. It's just extraordinary advice, and it's an incredible challenge. Challenge
Yeah,
accepted.
for me
Thank
too.
you for that.
Yeah, for me too. Right? It's
Yeah.
just, it's a daily. It's a daily.
Kristine, thank you so very much for sharing your heart, your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, and just your beautiful insight. I'm going to make sure that we have all of your contact information in the show notes so people can connect with you after being introduced to you now, because I know that they're going to want to just continue to learn and grow and connect with you. So thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate you so very much.
Yes. Thank you, Kristi. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right,
Until
girl.
next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Peopling Podcast, and grab your copy of the Peopling book on Amazon, and let's keep this connection movement going. Until next time, be curious, be kind, and keep peopling like you mean it.